Okay, welcome back to topic number 4. We have done part 1, part 2. Now I will continue on part 3. Let's have a look at where we stopped last time. Okay, we'll just browse through on the fuel properties, gas utilization system. Okay, I think we will start with the combustion chemistry. This is similar to what you have done in thermodynamics too. Okay, combustion chemistry, we learn about how do we derive the equations for combustion when you have a reaction, when you have a reactant and air mixed together, combust and produces the product of combustion. Okay, so generally this is a repetition from what we have done, but nevertheless we'll just highlight on what are important things that you need to remember, okay, especially when it is involved in power generation costs. So we know that combustion is a chemical reaction, okay, in which large quantity of energy, in this case heat, is being released. After all, this is the reason that we have combustion. We want the energy, right? We want the energy. We want to utilize the energy, convert into different forms of energy. At the end of the day, what we want is the electricity. So in terms of combustion, we can classify combustion into three: theoretical combustion, complete combustion with excess air, and the last one is the incomplete combustion. So we are talking about the amount of air that we supply into the system. Theoretical combustion is when you supply just enough air for complete combustion. Okay, just enough air refer to 100% air. It means that the amount of air is just sufficient for complete combustion. So in this case, the product of combustion consists of CO2, H2O, and nitrogen. And by the way, before I proceed further, the product of combustion or the product gases, it depends very much on the types of fuel that we are using. So in this topic, we are focusing on hydrocarbon fuel or carbon-based fuel. Okay, either we have coal, oil, or natural gas. For coal, we know that the composition of the fuel are many. One of them is carbon, hydrogen, sulfur, or maybe other types of element as well. For natural gas, we have carbon-based fuel as well, okay, CH4, C2H6, and whatnot. And then for fuel oil, we also have carbon-based fuel. So whenever you have carbon on the left hand side of your equation, in this case as part of the reactant, okay, carbon in theoretical combustion, we assume all the carbon is converted into CO2. Okay, carbon on the left hand side become CO2. Hydrogen on the left hand side of the equation, it will become H2O. Okay, hydrogen on the left hand side of the equation, it will be converted into water, H2O. And then nitrogen on the left hand side, which is in the air, it will not participate in the combustion process, so nitrogen will remain as nitrogen. So only three products expected from theoretical combustion. Okay, on the second types of combustion is when we supply excess air. So in this case, the amount of air that we supply is extra, in the sense that we want to increase the chances of having complete combustion. So the amount of air or the percentage of air is usually more than 100%. Okay, typically it is in between 20% or 30%. For it depends on the amount of on the type of fuel that we use. So for the case of excess air combustion, we still have the three products, CO2, H2O, and N2, and at the same time we have additional oxygen being produced as the product. Okay, because we are supplying excess air. Excess air means excess oxygen and excess nitrogen. So maybe some of the oxygen doesn't participate in the combustion, so it remains oxygen in the product. So you have 4 total product on the right hand side of your equation. Okay, and then for incomplete combustion, this is when the amount of air is not sufficient, less than 100%. So for all incomplete air combustion, the three product remains the same, CO2, H2O, and N2, and at the same time we have additional carbon monoxide. So this is our assumption. When you have incomplete combustion, usually we produce CO, the carbon monoxide. Okay, so this is actually referring to natural gas as the source of fuel. Okay, because in natural gas, the composition of natural gas does not include the sulfur. Okay, when we burn coal, when we burn fuel oil, either heavy fuel oil, light fuel oil, the element of coal and fuel oil usually they contain sulfur. So when you have sulfur on the left hand side of your equation, in all combustion we assume sulfur will react with oxygen and then it becomes sulfur dioxide, SO2. So whenever your fuel is coal or oil, don't forget to include sulfur on the left hand side as well as sulfur dioxide as one of the product. So whenever you have sulfur on the left hand side, you should have sulfur dioxide on the right hand side of your equation. So these are something that you need to observe. Okay, the product of combustion, the element that is produced after the combustion, it depends very much on the element or the composition of fuel themselves. Okay, in power generation, combustion would normally be in excess air condition. So if you look at this table, for coal combustion, usually the amount of excess air is in between 15 to 20%. For oil, it's about 5 to 10%. For multi-fuel burner system, we have 10 to 20%. Okay, for gas, natural gas is about 5 to 10% and whatnot. Okay, these are the approximation of the amount of percentage excess air, which is also dependent on the types of fuel. Okay, my question is that why is it important for us to supply excess air? Okay, I've mentioned this before. In combustion, there are many uncertainties. Okay, you might be having complete combustion, you might be having incomplete combustion. It depends, okay, on the chemistry of or the product reactant which reacts together during the combustion process. It depends on the temperature of the surrounding, it depends on the pressure of the surrounding, and it depends on many other different factors, okay, which is beyond the scope of this topic. We are not going to discuss that in detail because that is out of our current scope. But what I want to highlight is that the only reason we supply excess air is for us to increase the chances of having complete combustion. Remember, when you have combustion, we are burning fuel, right? Fuel is expensive, we need to pay for the fuel, so it is important for us to ensure that all the fuel that we supply is being combusted. Otherwise we are wasting our fuel. Okay, we are not getting the the right amount of heat that we want, because maybe certain percentage of fuel does not combust. When fuel doesn't combust, so we are losing the energy. So it is extremely important we ensure combustion is complete. Okay, all the fuel is completely combusted. So one of the reasons to increase the chances is for us to supply excess air, but the amount of excess air has to be just right. Okay, it is not necessary we put in as much air as possible. Maybe instead of putting in 20% excess air, why not we put in 60%, or why not we put in 100% or even 200%? So that is not a good practice as well. Okay, the only reason is that when you supply excess air, bear in mind that not all the air or not all the oxygen that is contained in the air is being used for combustion. If the amount of air that you supply is too much, okay, at the end of the day it will absorb all the heat that is being produced, so there is no point of you are actually operating in an inefficient manner. You supply excess air, of course you guarantee or you ensure combustion is complete, but at the same time you are also losing the heat. Okay, all the additional air is used to absorb all the heat that is produced after the combustion. So in this case, the amount of air that you supply has to be just right to ensure complete combustion. Okay, not too much, not too little, and the amount has to be just right. Okay, next is on the chemical equation. This is also a repetition from thermodynamics 2. So in this example or in this slide, I'll show you example of oil and gas combustion without moisture. So in this case, we have fuel, which is oil or gas, CmHn. We know when you have oil or gas, they are actually the hydrocarbon based fuel. Okay, so this is the fuel plus air, right? We are supplying air in this example. Air consists of oxygen plus 3.76 nitrogen. So this is an automatic equation that we use for air, okay, to indicate that our air in reality it consists of 79% nitrogen and 21% oxygen. Actually there are other elements as well, such as CO2 and also argon gases, but these gases, the composition is very small, such that when we take into account in the equation, we can simply ignore the smaller or less than 1% contribution of other gases. So in other words, we assume air to consist of 21% oxygen and 79% nitrogen. So the ratio of 21 to 79 is equal to 1 to 3.76 for nitrogen. So you have fuel plus X amount of air equals to the product of combustion. Okay, and this example given here is with excess air, means that we are supplying additional air. So when you supply excess air, the product of combustion will become carbon, here become CO2, hydrogen here it will become H2O. Okay, and then nitrogen doesn't participate, remain as nitrogen, and we have extra oxygen because you are supplying excess air. If you are talking about stoichiometric, then there is no oxygen on the right hand side of your equation. Alright, this example is given without a moisture. Without a moisture means usually moisture they exist in our fuel. Okay, but this is without the moisture, so we can simply ignore H2O from our fuel. If we are talking about oil and gas combustion with moisture means that there are water that exists. Okay, so you can just add water, just add another element for our reactant, which is water. So you have carbon base CH fuel, water plus air equals to the product of combustion. This is hydrogen on the left hand side, they become H2O as well. So at the end of the day, for excess air combustion, we still have 4 components on the right hand side of the equation with additional oxygen. Okay, and for coal, it is kind of complex because coal composition is many. Okay, you have carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, sulfur, nitrogen, and water. So these are all our coal. Okay, coal plus air equals to the product. Remember, we have excess air combustion. Carbon becomes CO2, hydrogen becomes H2O. Okay, oxygen, it will remain as oxygen because you are supplying excess air. Sulfur here will become SO2, nitrogen remain as nitrogen. They are inert gas, doesn't participate in combustion. H2O on the left hand side, hydrogen, right, will become hydrogen as well. So you have to do your balance of element fairly carefully lah, in terms of make sure that the number of element on the left hand side of the equation is the same as the number of elements on the right hand side of the equation. Okay, we'll do that in detail when we proceed with example at a later stage. Okay, now let's talk about the heat of combustion. After all, this is the ultimate objective of combustion. We want to obtain the heat, right? To estimate the amount of heat being produced, I think you also have done this before. We have to do a little bit of analysis in terms of the heat of combustion. The heat of combustion is actually the heat released in the combustion process. So remember, in a combustion equation, we have reactant on the left hand side of the equation. Okay, I'll just go back to the previous slide. These are all reactant on the left hand side of the equation here, and these are all product. Okay, product on the right hand side of the equation. This reactant, right, they carry energy. They carry certain amount of calorific value or energy on in the fuel or in the air themselves. Okay, after they react, they combust, they produces the product of combustion. The product of combustion is also, together with the amount of heat that is being released. So to find Q, okay, to find the heat, it is actually the summation of all the enthalpies, enthalpy of formation, and also all the enthalpies in the reactant minus all the enthalpies of the product. So the heat is actually the difference between all the energy in the reactant and all the energies in the product. Okay, we do summation here because there are many elements, there are many species in the reactant, there are many species or elements in the product. Okay, so basically the heat is actually the difference of enthalpies between reactant and also product. So I'm not going to go in detail. I want maybe later on you want to refresh back your memory on the combustion chemistry, on how do we find out the amount of heat being produced, okay, from your previous lesson in thermodynamics 2. Okay, similarly, when you have a combustion, right, we have to estimate, it is important for us to estimate the maximum temperature possible, okay, from a combustion process. So this temperature can also be obtained from this equation, right? Let's say we are talking about a combustor. You have a reactant, you have a product, right? You supply fuel, you supply air into the combustor. Combustion happen, it release the heat, and then at the same time you have element or a number of species in the product. Let's assume that the combustor is completely insulated such that we don't allow heat to transfer out of the combustion. Then the temperature inside the combustor will be as maximum as possible, right? Because the heat is not released to the ambient, so temperature inside there will become maximum. We call that a diabatic flame temperature. Okay, the maximum temperature possible, okay, for a combustion, it depends on what are the fuel that you use in that combustion process. So a diabatic flame temperature is possible if we set this equals to 0. Insulated, I mean insulate the combustor, Q equal to 0. Total energy of the reactant equal to total energy of the product. So you do that, plug in the numbers into the equation, and then the temperature that you obtain is actually the maximum possible temperature for that particular combustion. I will do some kind of example later on just to refresh back your memory on this one, on how do we calculate the adiabatic flame temperature. Okay, some example, some pictures of different types of flame based on different fuel. This picture show a typical example of the coal flame. Coal flame is kind of dirty. It consists a lot of soot, so that's why if you compare coal flame, natural gas flame, and oil flame, so it doesn't look neat as compared to the natural gas flame. This is very clean, okay, in the sense that there is no soot, right? Then we have oil flame, which is more or less similar to coal but slightly cleaner as compared to coal. Okay, the last subtopics under combustion, fuel and combustion, is actually the fuel handling system. Okay, so we know that in our power plant we require fuel for combustion. We want combustion because we want the heat. We want the heat to heat up water inside the boiler, become superheated steam. Superheated steam drive the steam turbine, okay, rotate the generator, produces the electricity at the end of the day. So that is a general overview of why we have combustion in our power plant. Okay, since we want combustion, we have to supply fuel. We might have coal, we might have natural gas, we might have oil as a source of fuel, and the amount of fuel that they use in the power plant is very large. Okay, it's huge. We require a huge amount of fuel in order to produce electricity. So you can imagine how much pollutant being produced when we burn a lot of fuel. Okay, so to start off, let's have a look here. How do we handle coal? Coal handling in the power plant is big as compared to other types of fuel, natural gas and also oil, because we want to handle coal, we require a lot of equipment, a number of equipment, and then we have to have so many machines, machineries, and many things to do the maintenance as well. So in order to understand that further, let's have a look here on how do we handle coal in the power plant. We know that coal is delivered, I mean, if we are talking about Malaysian scenario or all the power plants in Malaysia, coal is actually delivered using ships, because all our power plant, coal-fired power plant, they are located very close to the sea. Yeah. One of the reason is that it is easy for them to receive the coal directly from the ship. Okay, so in summary, the process for coal handling system is that fuel delivery is through ship, vessel, rail, bus and truck. So this is general. Maybe in other countries, when they have a power plant which is located right in the middle of the desert, as an example, somehow they might be using rail, okay, railway, to transfer the coal from the coal mine to the power station. Maybe they are using ship. You can also use barge, or maybe you can use truck to transfer the coal. Using truck, you have to have a number of trucks, many trucks to transfer the coal, and it might not be feasible, okay, because of the cost. So I personally think if your power plant is located very far away from the sea, then rail is another option for you to transfer a huge amount of coal to the power plant. Fuel delivered into the power plant, let's say we are talking mission scenario, through the ship, the dock and the dockyard, and then they do unloading. I mean, from the ship you have to unload the huge amount of coal, okay, from the ship to the maybe to the conveyor that will receive the coal from the ship. So for the unloading process, there are many equipments available or options. You can have a grab bucket, you can have a stacker reclaimer, okay, and then you have to prepare the coal as well. I mean, coal, when you want to transfer from the ship, they have to be filtered, as an example. So in this case, for preparation, they might be requiring a crusher, a vibrating screen, just to screen up the coal before it enter, or before they are transported to the station via conveyor belt. Okay, after the preparation, it is being transferred to the coal yard. So this is done through a conveyor belt or reclaimer, and then after that it is transferred to a storage. So first you need to store your coal in the power plant. The storage facility is usually outdoor. It is located at outdoor. We call that a coal yard. Okay, it is outdoor, and in some cases you might be having that indoor as well, or you might store them in a series of bunkers. The cheapest one, of course, you have to put it outdoor. You can also put it indoor if you want, but it depends. So usually in our practice, in Malaysian scenario, we just leave it outdoor because the amount of coal stored in our coal yard is a lot, right? Okay, after the storage, then whenever it is needed, you can just transfer from the coal yard to the boiler. Okay, I mean, for example, it has to go through a pulverizer mill. You want to crush them, so you call that in-plant handling. You bring the coal from the coal yard through, maybe some they have grab bucket, also they have stacker reclaimer in the coal yard. Transfer the coal from the coal yard, put it on the conveyor belt, and then they transfer to the pulverizer mill. Okay, and then in the pulverizer mill, or before it enter or after it enter the pulverizer mill, maybe sampling has to be done just to make sure that the properties of the coal is meeting the requirement, okay, before it is allowed for combustion. Okay, the sampling is important because we want to ensure that the composition is suitable for our boiler. Okay, you cannot simply put any types of coal in the boiler, because that boiler is usually designed to accept certain a certain composition of coal, and then at the end of the day, firing of coal is done inside the furnace or inside the boiler. Okay, this is an illustration of a coal handling system, a typical one. Maybe it varies from station to station, but generally it looks like this lah. Okay, I just put in the previous slide here. So this is the flow chart, the process. You have fuel delivery, unloading, preparation, and transfer. Okay, this happened at our jetty in the power plant. So this is the ship, they dock at the jetty, and then you have stacker reclaimer or boom type reclaimer or portal type reclaimer that will transfer the coal from the ship, okay, to the conveyor belt. So all this stage, fuel delivery, unloading, preparation, transfer happen somewhere around here. Conveyor belt will bring the coal from the jetty right to a coal yard. These are the coal yard. Okay, this is the coal yard. In the coal yard, basically the coal is stored, right? And then you have in-plant handling. Then whenever it is needed, so you can have a reclaimer as well, okay, which is located at certain location in the coal yard. The reclaimer will pick up the coal, put it in the conveyor belt, and then the conveyor belt will bring them to power station. Okay, to be exact, it will bring the coal to to the pulverizer mill for crushing the coal into smaller pieces or into powder before it allow for combustion in the combustion chamber. So that is a general overview on the process for coal in the power plant. Okay, some picture of our power plant. These are the overview of coal. Okay, coal yard here. These are the ship. This is very near. Okay, actually the location of the ship, it depends on how deep is your sea close to your power plant. Okay, in this picture it looks like the dock, okay, the jetty is very close to the power plant itself. So you can see this is the conveyor, right, into the coal yard, and then whenever the coal is needed, it will be transferred to the station here via a the conveyor belt as well. Okay, in this picture you can see that the location of the jetty is slightly far from the power station. Probably the sea water level here is shallow. Okay, so somehow ship is not able to dock very close to the station. Some picture again. These are a typical coal vessel unloading process at the jetty. You might have a train to transfer the coal here, and these are the conveyors. These are the roller for the conveyor, and also the repairing process for the conveyor belt. Okay, for the reclaimer, we have many different types of reclaimer. You can have stacker, okay, circular, stockpile stacker, barrel stacker, and we have many different types. It depends on the manufacturer, but what is important is that it is actually used to transfer the coal from the coal yard, maybe to the conveyor, or maybe from the ship or barge into the conveyor. Okay, unloader system, this is the one that they use from the ship. Okay, from the ship here to the conveyor. So you can just look at the picture for how does a typical unloader or grab bucket looks like. So this is another picture. Okay, this is the picture of the coal ship. So you can see the amount of coal that can be stored by the ship is actually huge. So these are the unloader. It unload all the coal from the ship to the conveyor belt. This is a picture of coal in the conveyor being transported, okay, into the pulverizer mill. This is an empty conveyor without the coal, and this is a picture of a pulverizer mill, or you can call it roller mill, or you can call it just a mill. Okay, the only function of this pulverizer mill is to make sure that the coal is crushed to the desired size before we burn the coal in the combustion chamber. So to crush that, we use a roller, the grinding roller, which is made from stone as well. So that's why I mentioned in the previous lecture that the HGI, the hard growth grindability index for the coal, is important. Okay, we need to know what is the index for hardness for the coal, because it will damage the our roller, if the HGI is above certain numbers or certain limit. Okay, so that's on the fuel handling system for the coal. Now let's have a look at the fuel handling system of the oil. Okay, it is simpler than coal. I think this is fairly straightforward. The process is you start off with the fuel delivery. Okay, fuel delivery of oil is done either through vessel as well, okay, through the ship, or through a pipeline. Okay, what happens is that, if it is transferred through a vessel, you have to unload the oil. So unload the oil, of course we need to have a pumping station. So you pump the oil from the ship to our storage facility. So our storage facility, it is simply a big fuel oil tank. So that is where we store our oil from the ship whenever there is shipment of oil that come from many areas around the world. So we store it there. Whenever the oil is needed, then we start to pump the oil into the power plant, or into the furnace to be exact. So that is an in-plant handling. One thing about handling of oil, okay, since oil viscosity is high, okay, relatively higher as compared to the gas, it is important for us to ensure that the viscosity is always right. So this oil has to be consistently heated. So that's why we have oil heater, we have metering station, okay, just to make sure that it does not solidify. Okay, it has to be heated continuously to make sure that it can flow lah. Okay, before it is fired. During the firing, we have a burner. Usually what happen, if you want to burn fuel oil or heavy fuel oil, light fuel oil, the burner will automatically atomize the oil. Atomize means they are broken into smaller droplet before combustion process. When you do atomizing, it will increase the surface area, and therefore the combustion efficiency will increase as well. Some picture of oil vessel that goes through the power plant. So you unload the oil by pumping the oil from the ship to a pipeline here. Okay, you have to have a oil heater. In order to heat up the oil, usually we use a heat exchanger, okay, to heat up the oil. These are the example of the tank for storage in the power plant. and you have a long piping system. So the system for the oil is not that complex as compared to the system that we have for our coal handling. The last one is on gas. This is, I think, the simplest fuel handling system as compared to coal, as compared to the oil. So previously we have covered that gas is actually being processed in a gas processing plant, and then it is transferred to the power station through piping system. Okay, so fuel delivery, usually we use a pipeline. Maybe in some cases, not in Malaysia, okay, they deliver the gas from the vessel. So if you deliver it to the pipeline, it is very straightforward. Okay, the pipeline will go from the processing plant directly to the front door of the power station. So as simple as that. You just need to open the valve, allow the gas to enter, and of course we have to meter. We have to calculate how much gas that enter your premise. Okay, and then for gas also we have a storage facility in the tank, and whenever it is needed, you open the valve, the gas will flow to your boiler. As simple as that. Okay, so we have done this, the gas handling system. Basically we are at the end of this chapter on fuel and combustion system. To summarize, let's have a look here at what are the important items that you might want to remember, in case you want to do revision and whatnot. Okay, what is the summary? We know that fuel is the largest component, okay, in power generation cost. Your electricity cost, about 60% or 70% of your electricity cost come from the cost of buying the fuel. Okay, and then coal properties are determined by proximate or ultimate analysis. Remember the difference between the proximate and ultimate analysis. Proximate analysis is much simpler in the sense that you're talking about moisture content, you're talking about ash content, okay, volatile matter content and whatnot. Whereby the ultimate analysis, we want to know what is exactly the element: carbon, hydrogen, water, sulfur, oxygen, nitrogen and whatnot, okay, and everything. So that is based on the ultimate analysis. Usually the proximate and ultimate analysis, they are expressed as percentage of mass. Okay, remember they are expressed as a percentage of mass unless otherwise stated in the question. Then you might want to observe carefully. If it is expressed as mass, somehow if you want to do the calculation for combustion, you have to convert it into volume, into molar. Then only you can use that number, put it in our combustion equation. Okay, co-ranking, remember the highest ranking up to the lowest ranking. Anthracite is the highest ranking, followed by bituminous, subbituminous, lignite, and last but not least, peat. Right? The higher the ranking anthracite, the more difficult for us to extract it from the earth. The higher the ranking, it is located right beneath the earth at a longer depth as compared to the lowest ranking coal. Okay, in terms of oil property, what are the important property that we learned? Is the flash point, the pour point, the viscosity, the sulfur content, and also the specific gravity. Then for natural gas, usually natural gas, they consist of many components, but the major one would be methane and also ethane. Okay, For combustion calculation, we can divide it into theoretical combustion, okay, or stoichiometric, complete combustion with excess air, and also incomplete combustion. You just need to observe what are the component in the fuel, then only you can estimate what are the component or what are the element in the product. Remember, when you have carbon on the left hand side, carbon become CO2, hydrogen become H2O, nitrogen remains the same, and if you have sulfur on the left hand side, it become SO2. For incomplete combustion, usually you would have carbon monoxide in the product. Okay, and last conclusion or last summary is that we know that coal is more complex to handle. It requires more fuel handling operation, followed by oil, followed by gas. Alright, so basically that's the end of this topic number 4, fuel and combustion system. I'll try to proceed with maybe some example on how do we do the calculation for combustion.